I wish I could say it was a big, dramatic realization, the kind that makes you stop mid-sentence and change your life instantly, but it wasn't like that. It was quieter, almost embarrassing, actually. I was halfway through a conversation, smiling like I was fully there, when I realized I hadn't heard a single thing this woman had just said. Not one. She was standing in front of me, warm, confident, animated. Her hands moved as she spoke, like she was building her story in the air. Every now and then, she'd laugh softly, like she couldn't quite believe how far she'd come. And me? I was stuck on one thought. How old is she? That was it. That was the loop in my head. Because the moment she mentioned her business was doing well, really well, something in me tightened, not visibly, not in a way anyone else would notice. But internally, I shifted. I started scanning her face, her posture, the way she spoke, looking for clues, trying to place her somewhere on a timeline that would make me feel okay. If she was older, I'd relax. If she was younger, I already knew how that would feel. Behind, again. And the worst part is, I still nodded while all this was happening. I even asked a follow-up question at some point, something automatic, something that sounded right, but I wasn't in the conversation anymore. I had turned her story into a measuring tape, and I didn't even realize how often I'd been doing that until that exact moment. It hit me like this quiet wave of discomfort. Not guilt, just this awareness that I wasn't being honest in the way I showed up around people, because I wasn't really seeing them. I was placing them above me, below me, ahead, behind, never just beside me. I went home that night with that strange, lingering feeling you can't shake off. You know when something small happens, but it keeps replaying in your mind like it's trying to teach you something? That was me. I remember dropping my bag, kicking off my shoes, and just sitting on the edge of my bed longer than usual. Not scrolling, not distracting myself, just thinking. And I started replaying conversations from past events, different faces, different rooms, same pattern. Someone shares something impressive. And somewhere in my mind, a quiet question shows up. How old were you when that happened? Not out loud, always, but internally, almost every time. And when I did ask it out loud, I disguised it well. I'd laugh a little before asking, or soften my tone, or pretend it was just casual curiosity. But deep down, I knew what I was really doing. I was checking where I stood. What I didn't expect was realizing how empty those interactions actually felt. Because when I thought back to those conversations, I couldn't remember details. I couldn't remember their exact words. I couldn't remember how their story unfolded. What I could remember was how I felt. Tense, evaluating, quietly comparing. It was like being in a room full of people, but never actually connecting with anyone. And that part bothered me more than anything. Because I wasn't going to these events just to collect information. I wanted growth. I wanted connection. I wanted to feel inspired, but not drained. But I had unknowingly turned every conversation into a silent competition. And competitions don't create connection. They create distance. A few weeks later, I found myself in a similar setting again. Same kind of room. Same soft background music, same polite laughter floating around. And I remember standing there, holding a small plate of food I wasn't really eating, thinking to myself, okay, try something different this time. No big rules, no pressure, just be present. That's it. So when I started talking to someone new, I made a quiet promise to myself, don't calculate, just listen. She started sharing her story, not perfectly, not in some polished, rehearsed way, but honestly, there were pauses, moments where she searched for the right words, little sighs in between sentences like she was remembering things as she spoke, and I noticed something immediately. When I wasn't busy measuring her, I could actually hear her, like really hear her. I found myself asking different questions too, not the usual timeline questions, but things like, what made you start in the first place? Was there ever a moment you almost gave up? What surprised you the most along the way? And her answers, they were layered, real, messy in a way that felt comforting. She talked about doubt, about trying things that didn't work, about feeling like she was figuring things out as she went. And at some point, this part stayed with me, she laughed softly and said, people always ask me how long it took, but no one really asks what it cost me. That line landed differently, because suddenly everything shifted. She wasn't just someone with an impressive outcome anymore. She was a person with a journey, and that journey had texture, late nights, missed opportunities, moments of uncertainty no one else saw, things that would never show up in a simple answer about age or timing. And I realized right there in that moment, I had been reducing people, reducing their experiences to numbers that made me feel either secure or inadequate. And in doing that, I had been missing the most important parts. From that day, I didn't make some loud declaration about changing. I just adjusted quietly. I stopped asking that question, not because age is irrelevant, but because of what it meant for me. Because for me, it wasn't about curiosity. It was about comparison. And once I saw that clearly, I couldn't unsee it. What surprised me most wasn't just how conversations changed. It was how I changed inside them. There was less pressure, less of that tight, restless feeling in my chest. I wasn't mentally rushing ahead, trying to figure out where I ranked. I was just there. And when you're truly present, something interesting happens. You start to notice things you used to miss. The way someone's voice softens when they talk about something that mattered deeply to them. The slight hesitation before they admit something vulnerable. The pride that shows up in small, quiet ways, not just in big achievements. And those details, they're what make conversations meaningful, not timelines, not age, not how quickly someone got somewhere. Over time, this shift started affecting more than just how I spoke to other people. It changed how I saw myself, because when you stop constantly measuring your life against someone else's timeline, you create space to notice your own progress. Space to appreciate how far you've come, even if it doesn't look impressive on paper. Space to breathe without feeling like you're always catching up to something invisible. And that kind of peace, it's subtle, but powerful. Now, I won't pretend the habit disappeared completely. There are still moments, little flashes where that old thought tries to come back. But how old is she though? And when it happens, I don't shame myself for it. I just notice it and let it pass. Then I come back to what actually matters, yet the person in front of me, the story being shared, the connection that's possible if I stay present. If I'm being honest, I think a lot of us do this in some form. We're taught in quiet ways that life has a timeline, that certain things should happen by certain ages. And when we don't see ourselves matching that, we start looking around, trying to figure out where we stand. But the truth is, no one's timeline is as clean or as straightforward as it looks from the outside. Everyone is figuring things out in ways you can't always see. Everyone has parts of their journey they don't lead with. So when we reduce everything to when something happened, we miss how it happened. And the how is where the real lessons are. So now, when I walk into rooms like that, I carry a different intention, not to measure, not to compare, but to understand, to listen, to connect. And it has changed everything. The way conversations feel, the way I feel afterwards, even the way I see my own path, because I'm no longer constantly asking, am I behind? I'm asking, am I growing? And those are two very different questions. If you've ever caught yourself doing this, quietly comparing, calculating, wondering if you're late or behind, I want you to pause for a second. Just pause and ask yourself, what would change if you stopped measuring and started listening? What would shift if you allowed your journey to be yours without constantly checking it against someone else's? You might be surprised by what opens up. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you ever had a moment where you realized you were comparing more than you were connecting? What did that feel like for you? Share it in the comments. I read them, and I genuinely love hearing your stories. And if this kind of conversation resonates with you, the slow, honest, reflective kind, then subscribe to the GistOver Cooking YouTube channel. There's more of this waiting for you, and I'll meet you there in the next one.